We're going to go through 10 plants that accidentally conquered the global economy, but I want to be clear up front about what we mean by accidental. These weren't discovered through organized science or intentional breeding programs. Each one was found because a human was doing something completely unrelated, noticed an unexpected effect, and then couldn't stop using it. Industrial civilization didn't plan these dependencies. It inherited them from a string of flukes, and the supply chains, the trade wars, the whole economic architecture built around these 10 species reflects that messy, unplanned origin. Number 1, tobacco. Start with tobacco, because tobacco is where the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Indigenous peoples across the Americas burned it in ceremony for centuries before Europeans showed up. And the Spanish who first encountered it weren't shopping for a cash crop. They wanted spices, gold, something that justified the voyage. Tobacco barely registered. What changed things wasn't strategy. A Virginia colonist got hold of a milder Caribbean variety around 1612 and started growing it experimentally, mostly because the colony was hemorrhaging people and money and nobody had a better idea. That first export shipment to London sold. Within a decade, colonists were planting tobacco in the actual streets of Jamestown. The British Crown collected tobacco taxes within decades. A weed captured a government. Number 2, coffee. Coffee's origin story is almost embarrassingly low-tech. A goat herder in Ethiopia noticed his animals acting wired after eating berries from a particular shrub, tried the berries himself, and that was it. That single observation, if it happened anything like the legend describes, sits at the root of a global industry worth hundreds of billions today. What caffeine actually does is block the brain receptors that trigger drowsiness, so you stay alert longer than you naturally would. Merchants figured that out fast. By the 1600s, coffee houses across the Ottoman Empire and Europe weren't just social spaces. They were where deals closed, where ship owners gathered to underwrite maritime risk. Lloyd's of London started as exactly that kind of coffee house. Number 3, cocoa. Cacao was currency before it was food. Aztec warriors and priests drank it bitter, spiced, mixed with chili, and those same beans paid taxes and bought goods across Mesoamerica. The plant was already running an economy. Spanish conquistadors tasted it, and one early account called it a drink fit for pigs. What flipped everything was sugar. European palates couldn't handle the bitterness, so someone sweetened it, and demand started climbing fast. Now cacao needed tropical land and cheap labor to grow at scale, so that one flavor adjustment built plantation systems across the Caribbean and West Africa. Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana still produce most of the world's cacao today because of that single taste modification. Number 4, tea. Tea starts as a Chinese legend. Leaves fall into a pot of boiling water, and a medicinal tradition begins that runs for centuries before anyone thinks to export it. Britain got hooked on tea in the 1600s and started hemorrhaging silver to China to pay for it, getting almost nothing back in return. That trade deficit drove one of history's most destructive drug trades, which we'll get to shortly. Britain's tea taxes on American colonists fed directly into the Boston Tea Party and accelerated the American Revolution. A leaf reshaped 2 continents. The British fix was espionage. A Scottish botanist disguised himself as a Chinese merchant, smuggled out plants and seeds, and built what became India's entire tea industry. Number 5, opium poppy. Papaver somniferum has been in continuous cultivation for at least 6,000 years. Ancient Sumerian texts reference it, Egyptian physicians prescribed it, Greek and Roman doctors relied on it. This isn't a plant humans recently stumbled onto. What changed in the modern era wasn't the plant's chemistry, it was the industrial scale. Britain was hemorrhaging silver to China for tea and silk, and the East India Company needed something China's population would buy back in volume. Opium grown in Bengal fit that requirement, so they shipped thousands of chests of it into China annually. China tried to stop the trade. Britain fought a war to continue it, won, and extracted Hong Kong as the price of losing. Number 6, rubber tree. Indigenous peoples in the Amazon had been waterproofing containers and coating fabric with latex from Hevea brasiliensis for centuries, before Europeans showed up and decided it was a curiosity. For about 100 years after European contact, that's all it stayed, because the material melted in summer heat and cracked in winter cold. A stove accident fixed that. A man experimenting with rubber and sulfur dropped the mixture onto a hot surface and noticed it didn't melt. That produced vulcanized rubber, which the Industrial Revolution immediately needed. Brazil held the monopoly because the tree only grew wild in the Amazon, and the people harvesting it lived under debt bondage and documented violence while the rubber barons collected the money. Number 7. Willow, source of aspirin. People have been chewing willow bark for pain relief for at least 4,000 years. Ancient Egyptians used it. Hippocrates prescribed it. Native American peoples across North America used it for fever and pain. The knowledge spread across continents through observation alone, not through labs or published papers, just people noticing what worked and passing it on. What nobody understood for most of that time was the chemistry behind it. In 1828, a German chemist isolated the active compound from willow bark, salicin, and that extraction eventually led to acetylsalicylic acid, which Bayer patented and sold as aspirin. The willow tree didn't change. Someone just figured out how to own it. Number 8. Cinchona tree, source of quinine. Malaria killed more people than any weapon in human history, and before the 1600s there was no treatment. You either built partial immunity through repeated exposure or you died. The Quechua people of the Andes already knew that bark from the cinchona tree reduced fever, and Spanish colonizers in Peru documented that and shipped the knowledge back to Europe. European physicians resisted it because the knowledge came from indigenous sources rather than classical medicine. That resistance had real consequences. Quinine, the active alkaloid in cinchona bark, made tropical colonization survivable. So the same territories that had been killing European soldiers by the thousands suddenly became manageable, and colonial administrators moved in. Number 9. Chili peppers. Capsaicin is a defense chemical. The pepper plant evolved it specifically to stop mammals from eating the fruit, because mammals chew seeds and destroy them. Birds don't feel the burn, so they swallow the fruit whole and spread the seeds intact. The plant wasn't trying to feed us. We ate it anyway. Columbus misnamed it pepper because that's what he was looking for, and that naming mistake slotted chili peppers directly into existing spice trade networks. Portuguese traders carried them through Africa, India, and Southeast Asia within decades. Cuisines we think of as ancient spicy traditions. Indian curries, Korean kimchi, Sichuan cooking, adopted chili peppers relatively recently through those colonial trade routes. What the data shows is that capsaicin triggers a pain response, then the body counters with endorphin release. That pain then pleasure cycle kept people coming back, which kept farmers growing it, which made it one of the most widely grown spice crops on Earth today. Number 10. Cannabis. Cannabis sativa spent most of human history as a fiber crop. Hemp built the ropes that rigged naval fleets, and the word canvas literally derives from cannabis. So when governments banned it in the 20th century, they weren't just restricting a drug. They pulled a structural material out of the global fiber market and handed that space to synthetic alternatives. The plant didn't stop growing. A parallel economy ran underground for decades, generating real money outside any official channel. And now legal cannabis markets are producing serious tax revenue across multiple countries. What's worth noting is that cannabis is being rediscovered simultaneously as fiber, medicine, and commercial crop, and the economic accounting for what prohibition actually cost is still incomplete. Every plant on this list followed the same path. A human bumped into it while doing something else, noticed an effect they didn't plan for, and then couldn't stop using it. The dependency came first. The industry, the trade routes, the wars, the labor systems, all of that came second, built around a biological reality nobody designed. Nicotine, caffeine, quinine, morphine, capsaicin, these aren't products of human cleverness. They're plant defense compounds that evolution produced, and we stumbled into them. Next time you drink your morning coffee, you're inside a supply chain that started with a goat acting strange in a field.